Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party. Distinguished guests and fellow members of the Corps, welcome to Washington Hall for the presentation of the 62nd Sylvanus Thayer Award. Please remain standing for the invocation by Chaplain Paul Lukowski.
Duty, honor, country is not just a way to look at certain things, but a certain way to look at all things. Thank you, God, for General Ann Dunwoody, who has always lived to a higher standard, whose service and accomplishments exemplify her personal devotion to West Point's ideals. We are grateful for this opportunity to honor her tonight with the award named after our revered father of our military academy. May you smile upon our food and drink and proceedings this evening. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening, the Corps of Cadets is honored to host many distinguished guests. In particular, please join me in welcoming General Dennis Reimer, the 33rd Chief of Staff of the Army, and General George Casey, the 36th Chief of Staff of the Army. I would now ask that you join me in welcoming our guest of honor, General Ann Dunwoody. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your meal. To introduce the 60th Superintendent of the United States Military Academy, Lieutenant General Darryl A. Williams.
All right, how you doing tonight? Sergeant Major, what do you think? We'll try it one more time. Sergeant Major went like this. How you doing tonight? That'll get it done. Speech remarks complete. General Dunwoody, distinguished guests, Friends, alumni, and members of the Corps of Cadets, good evening and welcome to the United States Military Academy at West Point. Thank you all for being here this evening as we honor one of the Army's most outstanding leaders. There are a few special guests with us that I'd like to take a moment to recognize. Of course, our honoree this evening, the recipient of the 2019 Sylvanus Thayer Award. Join me in a round of applause for retired General A. Dunwoody. Thank you, General. And her husband, retired Air Force Colonel Craig Brochie. Good to see you, sir. Several family members here as well. Her brother Bill and his wife Tracy, her sister Sue, her husband Jim, their daughter Christy, and their friend Beth, her sister Jackie and her husband Steve, her niece Brooke and her family Edward and Elizabeth, and her niece Jamie and her family John IV, Jasper, and Josephine. Welcome all. Let's give them all a round of applause. We have a number of distinguished guests here as well. As the first captain mentioned, former acting Secretary of the Army, the Honorable Patrick Murphy, the Honorable Sean Manasco, class of '92, Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, the Honorable Kristen French, class of '86, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Logistics and Material Readiness, the 33rd Chief of Staff of the Army, and a West Point distinguished graduate, General Retired Dennis Reimer, the 36th Chief of Staff of the Army, General Retired George Casey, the Honorable Brigadier General Retired Sam Lessie, class of 1945, Lieutenant General Retired John Dubia, class of '66, and his wife Maureen, Lieutenant General Retired Bill Grizzoli, class of 1976, Lieutenant General Retired Joe DeFrancisco, class of '65, distinguished graduate and chairman of the Board of Directors for the West Point AOG, and his lovely wife Lynn, Major General Retired John Wharton, class of 1981, and his wife Rebecca, Dr. Louis Sorley, class of 1956, West Point distinguished graduate, and his wife Jenny, Mr. Stan Shipley, class of 1973, Vice Chairman of the West Point AOG Board of Directors, and Mr. Todd Brown, class of 1985, President and CEO of the West Point AOG, and his wife Janet. Let's give them all a round of applause. For more than 60 years, the Thayer Award has recognized outstanding citizens, outstanding leaders from all walks of life for their accomplishments, their character, and their commitment to service. Two of those awardees, father and son, had something to say about service. Our 2017 awardee, President George W. Bush, once said, "There is no higher calling than the service in the armed forces. We live in freedom because every generation has produced patriots willing to serve a cause greater than themselves." Some years earlier, his father, President George H.W. Bush, our 1994 honoree, said, "There can be no definition of a successful life that does not include service to others." General Dunwoody and the Dunwoody family know a little something about service, and in particular, service to country. General Dunwoody has said in the past that she bleeds olive drab green, and that bloodline runs as far back as the birth of our nation, as generations of Dunwoodys have answered the call to duty and service. From her great-great-great-grandfather, a private from her great-great-great-grandfather, a private with the Cumberland County Militia during the Revolutionary War, to 4 generations of West Point grads. Her great-grandfather from the class of 1866, who was Teddy Roosevelt's signal officer when they took San Juan Hill. Her grandfather, class of 1905, who was the Army's chief of supply during World War I. Her father, from the class of June 1943, who fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And her brother, from the class of 1970. Let's salute all of the great Dunwoody service to the district. That olive green line of service also includes her older sister, who was one of the Army's first female helicopter pilots, and also includes a tint of Air Force blue, with her husband, a retired Special Operations Colonel, and her brother-in-law and niece, both Air Force A-10 pilots. Like many others, she intended to only spend a couple of years in the Army and then pursue her dream of becoming a phys ed teacher and coach, but instead was inspired to stay and continue serving. And she writes in her book, "For many of us, service becomes a calling and a passion for a variety of reasons." Commissioned into the Women's Army Corps, or WACS, in the early days of the all-volunteer force, and before women were fully integrated into the Army, General Dunwoody would go on to serve a distinguished 38-year career that took her from a supply platoon leader at Fort Sill to command of the largest logistics organization in the United States Armed Forces, the Army Materiel Command, rising from second lieutenant to the nation's first female 4-star officer. Along the way, she would deploy in support of Operation Desert Storm with the 82nd Airborne Division, and later for Operation Enduring Freedom as Commanding General of 1st Corps Support Command. She would earn a company command as a 1st Lieutenant, become the first female battalion commander in the 82nd Airborne, as well as the first female general officer at Fort Bragg. She would also graduate from Army Airborne School, one of the first female officers to do so, and earn the Master Parachutist Badge. She's been called many things over her career: a brilliant logistician, one of the Army's best, a trailblazer, and a breaker of the brass ceiling. But most importantly, General Ann Dunwoody simply considers herself a soldier. Retired General Stanley McChrystal said of her, she was one of our first female 4-star generals, not because she was a great female soldier, but because she was simply a great soldier. For General Dunwoody, service was truly a calling and a passion, and her passion for service continued well after retiring from the Army in 2012 through her involvement with various public, private, and nonprofit organizations, inspiring future generations of leaders, as well as inspiring others to service. General Dunwoody's accomplishments certainly speak for themselves, particularly the honor of achieving 4-star rank. But for all good leaders, and especially those who serve in the profession of arms, the greatest honor and reward comes not from the stars on your shoulder or the ribbons and badges on your uniform, but rather from the trust earned from those under your command. And in closing, there's a quote in the foreword of the General's book from a young captain that served under her many years ago that I think really captures that sentiment. In the military, it is said that you can often fool your boss. You can sometimes fool your peers, but you can never fool your soldiers. General Dunwoody commanded the trust and service of her soldiers, not as a function of her rank or position, but rather as a function of her mastery of her profession and her willingness to always place the needs of the soldier first. Those powerful words speak to her competence, her commitment, her compassion, and her character. All four the ingredients for building and sustaining trust, which is at the core of great leadership. At West Point, we call that living honorably, leading honorably, and demonstrating excellence, or being a leader of character. And I can think of no better example of a leader of character or exemplar of our Army's values and West Point's ideals of duty, honor, and country than General Ann Dunwoody. Ma'am, if, as the elder President Bush once said, the definition of a successful life includes service to others, then you have, without a doubt, lived a very successful life. We are honored to recognize you this evening, not only for your achievements, but also for your legacy of service to our Army and our nation. A legacy of service that also includes the countless soldiers, officers, NCOs, and great Army civilians you have led and inspired over the years, many of whom still serve and no doubt continue your legacy as they lead and inspire future generations. Thank you for your service, your leadership, and example, and we are so proud to honor you in the achievements of this evening. It is now my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the board of directors for the West Point Association of Graduates, Lieutenant General Retired Joe DeFrancisco, class of 1965. Hooah.
Good evening, everyone. General and Mrs. Williams, on behalf of the Association of Graduates, I thank you, the staff and faculty of the United States Military Academy, and the Corps of Cadets for hosting this presentation of the Sylvanus Thayer Award. To the Corps of Cadets, congratulations and thank you for the splendid review this afternoon. Your constant excellence makes us all very proud. Today marks the 62nd annual presentation of the highest honor West Point and the Association of Graduates can bestow upon an American citizen who did not graduate from the military academy. This year is especially significant as we celebrate our 150th anniversary as an association. The concept for the Thayer Award was developed by the West Point class of 1931 as they planned their 25th reunion. The Academy and the Association of Graduates agreed that such an award would contribute to improving the public understanding of West Point and the principles upon which it is built. From the very beginning, the purpose of the Thayer Award has been to recognize an American citizen of outstanding character and accomplishments whose stature in the civilian community draws wholesome comparison to the qualities for which West Point strives. General Dunwoody is a perfect example of this ideal. Her leadership, love of country, and untiring efforts to make our nation better and stronger are lessons all Americans can admire. Having General Ann Dunwoody's name on the Thayer Award plaque and her portrait in the Thayer Room of Taylor Hall forever demonstrates to the public the principles upon which it is built: duty, honor, and country. General Dunwoody joins a diverse array of significant Americans. The names of previous Thayer awardees are truly impressive. Their names, engraved on the plaque at the entrance to Washington Hall, include renowned scientists, astronauts, esteemed members of the clergy, and members of Congress. Other recipients include Supreme Court justices, members of the President's cabinet, and renowned journalists. There are also the names of 4 former presidents of the United States. Among the attributes shared by all are an intense love of country and untiring efforts to make our nation better and stronger. General Dunwoody, I can say without hesitation that your name on West Point's Thayer Award plaque greatly enriches the prestige of our alma mater. The Association of Graduates is honored to participate in these ceremonies, recognizing your life of service to America. It is now my privilege to represent the long gray line in presenting the 2019 Sylvanus Thayer Award to a true American patriot whose actions exemplify the qualities of duty, honor, country. General Dunwoody and General Williams, please join me in front of the dais.
Well, good evening, and thank you. I wish I could begin to describe the feelings of humility and gratitude that are absolutely consuming me at this very moment. I am so incredibly honored to be this year's recipient of the Sylvanus Thayer Award. I'm truly grateful to the West Point Association of Graduates for selecting me for this prestigious award. And I'm equally grateful to the Corps of Cadets for making our stay here so memorable and for that very special ceremony this afternoon. You looked fantastic. Thank you, General and Mrs. Williams, for being such gracious hosts. I can assure you, I'm standing here still in disbelief and awe. I'm so honored to be joining such a list of distinguished awardees that, as you heard, includes 4 presidents, 8 secretaries of state, 4 secretaries of defense, 8 stalwarts of Congress, 7 general officers, as well as industrial diplomats, an astronaut, and several really just great American citizens like Ross Perot and Gary Sinise. And of course, my husband's all-time favorite, comedian legend, Bob Hope. Believe me, that's a pretty impressive list for a simple foot soldier to be joining. Now, back in 2008, at my promotion ceremony with General George Casey, we were standing in a large auditorium in the Pentagon, surrounded by an overflow of crowd of family, friends, and well-wishers, and I knew I was facing one of the most difficult and emotionally charged speeches of my life. Well, this evening's festivities certainly rival those feelings. As I look out and see members of my family, friends, former bosses, and well-wishers as well once again, I am so grateful to all of my family, a family full of patriots and selfless servants, for being here tonight. I know how busy you are, and I know how far you traveled to be here, so thank you for your continued love and support. What's more exciting for me, as I look out in the audience, I see the faces of the future. I see the future leadership of our United States Army, an army that I've been around my entire life, an army that provided me opportunities, an army that I have always loved and will continue to love all the days that I have left on this earth. During my career, I was blessed to achieve many firsts. But what I want each and every one of you to know, there's not one single day of my service that I ever considered myself a female soldier. Like most of you, I just considered myself a proud American soldier. That almost fell on her fanny. But for me, this day, this place, has a very personal meaning for me. Today brings to life a story about a remarkable soldier, a soldier who's very special to me. This soldier was a young armor officer who graduated from West Point in 1943, June. Not long after his graduation, this young soldier found himself on the battlefields of Europe toward the end of World War II. He was serving in the 14th Armored Division, leading a group of equally young soldiers fighting along the French-German border. In January 1945, this soldier was severely wounded when the tank he was in was blown up. In fact, his injuries were so severe, he almost lost a leg. When the doctor told him he might have to amputate his leg, he responded to the doctor, "Doctor, I'm going to keep this leg long enough to kick you in the ass with it." Fortunately, he recovered and was awarded the Purple Heart. So like many of you here today, he was a true fighter, on the battlefield and off, and he continued to serve. In 1951, this soldier commanded the 3rd Battalion of the 17th Infantry Regiment in Korean War. There, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for Valor and another Purple Heart, and he continued to serve. In 1971, this same soldier commanded the 5th Mechanized Brigade in Vietnam. The soldier was a proud 3-war veteran of our greatest generation. And I can tell you there's no one more proud of him than me. That soldier's name is Harold Halsey Dunwoody, my dad. When people used to ask him about his 2 Purple Hearts, he was quick to say, "Well, I was just a slow learner." But we all know better. I know much of my success is found in what I learned from my dad as a patriot and a soldier. And while my dad was a West Point grad, a class of 43, as you heard, his dad, Halsey, went to West Point class of 1905, and his granddad, Henry, graduated from the Point in 1866. My brother Buck, or Bucky as his classmates called him, graduated in class of 1970. Now you understand why people think I have olive drab blood running through my veins. My brother Buck made a career in the business world after his service in the Army, and I think he was surprised how well this education, this institution, and these traditions prepared him for a successful career outside the Army. Sadly, he passed away last year, way too young and way too early. So while the long gray Dunwoody line is not physically here tonight, I know they are here in spirit. And I know my brother Buck is probably still walking the area up in heaven. I also know my mom is here with us in spirit. My mom, a devout Catholic, was the strongest, most selfless, gracious, caring, and loving person I've ever met. She pretty much raised 6 kids all on her own while Dad was serving our nation. She taught me the glass was always half full, and no matter where we were, no matter how tough the challenge, it was never going to rain on our parade. If there's anyone who deserves immediate entry into the Order of Sainthood, it's my mother. And I know she's smiling down just because this event created another opportunity for the Dunwoody family to get together. Now, as you heard, I could stand here and tell you that I always knew I wanted to be a soldier. But an Army career is not exactly how I saw my life unfolding. As far back as I can remember, all I ever wanted to do was be a coach and teach physical education. I competed in sports all of my life. This was before Title IX. There were no sports scholarships for women. We just competed for the love of the game. But I can assure you that even back then, I learned as much from losing as I did from winning. I learned about building a team, and I learned about building confidence. So while this was not in my master plan, I did end up joining the Army right out of college with a direct commission as a second lieutenant with a 2-year commitment. I figured I could stand on my head for 2 years, but I always knew that this little short 2-year service was just a short detour en route to my childhood dream of becoming a coach. Well, after my 2-year stint was up, I remember telling my dad, I really like being a soldier, and I love leading soldiers. And I think that I'll stay in as long as I enjoy what I'm doing and can make a difference. And that's exactly what I tried to do, one job at a time. So my initial 2 years turned into 5, turned into 10, and yes, eventually 38. But what I realized is that I really did end up fulfilling my childhood dream. I just did it in a different profession, in a different classroom. I ended up coaching thousands of men and women on and off the battlefield in a very physically demanding profession, our United States Army. So when people ask me, Ann, did you ever think you were going to be a general, let alone a 4-star general? I told them, not in my wildest dreams. No one was more surprised than me, except, of course, my husband. But you all know what they say. Behind every successful woman, there's an astonished man. My first assignment was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And there I met my very first platoon sergeant, Sergeant First Class Wendell Bowen. Sergeant Bowen was clearly the best non-commissioned officer in the company. And I remember when they made the announcement that I was going to be Sergeant Bowen's new platoon leader. Sergeant Bowen just looked at me and smiled with that Tennessee twang and said, "Ma'am, I'm going to make you the best lieutenant in the United States Army." Well, after one of my blunders as a second lieutenant, Sergeant Bowen just shook his head and looked at me and said, "You're really going to make me work at this, aren't you?" But Sergeant Bowen took me under his wing and taught me how to be a good platoon leader. He was so good that the lessons he taught me in leadership not only permeated my leadership style, but stayed with me to this day. Now, one of the first and most important lessons he taught me was to never walk by a mistake. Now think about that. Never walk by a mistake. I was taught if you walk by a mistake, you just set a new lower standard. If you see a mistake, if you see someone doing something wrong, and you turn the other way, then you just set a new lower standard. And the new lower standard becomes the new standard in the eyes of the offender. By not making on-the-spot corrections, you send a message to your soldiers that standards aren't important and that leaders are not responsible for policing the force. Now, in the Army, a mistake can be something simple like seeing a soldier shuffle down the street in uniform with his hands in his pockets. But if you don't make an on-spot correction, that now becomes the new standard. Or it can be something more significant, like not requiring a soldier to maintain his combat equipment to standard. Well, a weapon that's not maintained to standard in training could result in a malfunction, but a weapon not maintained to standard in combat could lead to a fatality. And in the military, failing to force standards can be a slippery slope. Leads to poor performance, people getting hurt, or worse, that possibility of an unnecessary loss of life. Now, one of my great mentors and friends was General Dennis Reimer, our 33rd Chief of Staff. He used to talk passionately about values-based leadership. Now, if you say it real fast, it sounds easy, and it sounds even common sense. But I can assure you that values-based ethical leadership is neither easy nor common sense. If it was, we wouldn't be subjected to the headlines we see about leaders with lapses in judgment, leaders who have failed to uphold the values and ethical conduct that sound so easy and so common sense. Now, when I joined the Army back in 1975, I just assumed as a woman I was going to have to exceed the standards to be accepted in the ranks, and I strove to do just that. But what I realized during my journey is that all the good leaders that I looked up to, all the good leaders that I respected, held themselves to a higher standard and encouraged their subordinates to do the same. Now, growing up as an Army brat, I assumed my little 2-year time in the Army was going to be personally and professionally rewarding. But quite honestly, I never really thought about what my responsibilities were as a leader to safeguard the profession. And as I look back on my career, I now know the things that we do as leaders will either help safeguard the profession or taint the profession in the eyes of the country that we serve. And it's important for you to know what I didn't know at the time, is that what you do as leaders matters. Your country, your classmates, and the soldiers you will lead in the future will expect that you will leave West Point with the moral and ethical skill sets to lead, decide, motivate as you take your rightful place stewarding the profession of arms. At the end of the day, your success will not be measured by the rank you achieve, or how many parachute jumps you've had, or how fast you run. Your lasting legacy will be the leadership you displayed 24/7, in and out of uniform, in peace and in war. Doing the right thing for the right reason, doing what you know to be morally and ethically right. Now, I didn't just skip along the yellow brick road in the land of Oz and wake up one morning as a 4-star general. I had obstacles, I had roadblocks, but I had a lot of people willing to help me along the way. And I think those obstacles, those roadblocks, and the people willing to help exist in every profession and in every organization. But if you believe in yourself, you stay on the moral high ground, you can make believers out of non-believers. If you try to be the best you can be and never let others dissuade you from something you believe in or something you're passionate about, just think about it for a minute. If we let others unduly influence or make decisions for us, they win. If we let others drive us away from something we're passionate about or something we believe in, they win. Were there times when it have been easy for me to run in the face of adversity? You bet. Were there times when I was scared, afraid, or frustrated? You bet. But at the end of the day, I would ask myself the question, if I quit, if I take the easy road and don't continue to try to make a difference, who's the real winner and who's the real loser? And for me, the seemingly insurmountable challenges turned into opportunities. It was all about leadership. The thought I'd like to leave with you tonight is that most people, like yourselves, do want you to make a difference. And your country is counting on you to make that difference. The good leaders I know want to inspire and encourage folks and people with strong, principled, ethical leadership. And while the ideals of duty, honor, country will long endure, it is the preparation that you do personally, physically, professionally, and spiritually that will ensure that you are truly prepared to live up to those ideals. When America needs a great general, Eisenhower or MacArthur, they will look first to those who have walked the plane at West Point. When America needs a Secretary of State or Defense, much as we've done today, they will look to those who are credentialed at West Point. You are the future, and when called upon, I know you will do your country, your fellow soldiers, your family, and yourselves proud. As for me, West Point will always be a special place. I'll always come back for the history, traditions, and for the great soldiers I've known who have walked the plane. But most importantly, I'll come back to maintain my special relationship with this special place on the Hudson that connects me to my family tradition and to the Army that I love. As we sit in this wonderful hall this evening, thousands of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Coast Guard are deployed around the globe. They're in harm's way, doing our nation's heavy lifting. I know you share my pride in our men and women in uniform and their families. So tonight, I'd like to accept this award on their behalf, wherever they may be serving. Please pray for their success and safe return. Thank you once again for this incredible honor. God bless all of you. God bless America. Go Army!
General Dunwoody, thank you for your service to our nation and for your participation in the Thayer Award ceremonies. Please accept this cadet bust as a gift from the Corps of Cadets as a token of our appreciation for your inspiring remarks this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the singing of the Alma Mater, led by the Cadet Glee Club. please remain standing for the benediction by Chaplain Polakowski.
Blessed are you, Lord God of heaven and earth. You have ordained that grace builds on nature. A country is built on solid citizens, and successful military campaigns are built on preparation and proper procurement and placement of provisions. Blessed be the natural gifts her parents, her ancestors, living and dead, her family, the natural talents and supernatural graces you have showered upon our guest of honor. Blessed be our army, which she has so successfully served. And blessed be our country, which she continues to build up. Blessed be all here who have participated tonight. And blessed be West Point, especially as we beat Navy. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the Thayer Award presentation this evening. Guests and members of the Corps, please stand and remain standing at your tables until the official party departs. We will make another announcement when guests and members of the Corps are cleared to depart. For our guests, the shuttle buses to Buffalo Soldier Field are located near MacArthur's statue, which is a short walk to your left as you exit Washington Hall. Once again, thank you all for attending this evening. Corps dismissed. By order of General Williams, Corps is actually dismissed. Thank you.